big crowd. It isn't as hard as sitting in Fenway Park in the bleachers with an Orioles cap on. So as long as no one throws peanuts or dumps beer on me, I feel like this is gonna go all right. So to get that out of the way. So today I'm going to talk about the experience of the Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative and our experience in community organizing and planning and development over the last 30 years, and share some of our lessons learned, both the good and the bad, and try to share with you, some of what we may be able to give to you guys here. But also I'm here to learn, and it's been really interesting so far already listening to folks talking. I'll just start off. I strongly believe that the Community Land Trust model is an innovative and flexible tool that can play a strong role in housing, in promoting housing and economic development in the neighborhoods, while ensuring that residents are at the lead in shaping that development, and ensuring that residents who have fought so hard to make these neighborhoods what they are not the ones displaced when new development comes to town. Just want to give you a little snapshot of the Dudley neighborhood. We're located in the blue right there, literally right in the middle of Boston, in the Roxbury and North Dorchester sections. We're about 2 miles from downtown. It's a very diverse neighborhood, about a third African American, a third Latino, and 25% Cape Verdean population. Very young neighborhood, with 35% of the families living at or below the federal poverty line. When DS&I was founded in the mid-'80s, we were literally known as the dumping ground of Boston. If you wanted to dump your construction debris and nobody would catch you, take it to Dudley. If you want to steal a car, take it to Dudley. That's where stolen cars went to die. If you wanted to dump anything, just dump it out. We had 20 illegal trash transfer stations that just set up where people would just come and dump their garbage. So you can see some of the issues. 1,300 vacant lots in the neighborhood. Some of this might look familiar to you. I hope not too familiar, but it's a challenge in a lot of cities. But this was our example. Well, we focused in on the Dudley Triangle, which was about a 62-acre section of the neighborhood, right in the heart of the Dudley neighborhood. 62 acres of land. At the time, more than 30 acres were vacant, if you see in the black dot. And we're going to come back to this later when I fast forward to today. Just a few shots of what the neighborhood was like in the mid-'80s. These are 2 little girls trying to walk to school down Winthrop Street. So when Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative got formed, it got formed out of a campaign called Don't Dump on Us, which was literally just an attempt to clean up vacant lots and stop the illegal dumping and close the trash transfer stations. There was really, at the time, no strategy that was too far-fetched to try to address this. In terms of the stolen cars, one of the strategies that someone came up with was, we're looking at one point, over 100 stolen cars just dumped on Dudley Street. Calling the city didn't do anything. So one very wise community leader went down to the mayor's campaign headquarters, who was running for re-election, took 200 bumper stickers and put them all over the stolen car. 2 days later, every car was off. Every stolen car was off. So we resorted to everything. We threw everything against the wall and tried every strategy that could be done. But we realized quickly that if we had some success around closing the trash transfer stations and cleaning up the lots, but we realized if we didn't have a more proactive approach, we were just going to be reacting to whatever came next, be that gentrification, be that more dumping, etc. In fact, the city of Boston, in the meantime, had developed a new master plan for the neighborhood that their only problem was they hadn't actually consulted with residents of the neighborhood. And so DS&I's strategy was to literally rip up the master plan and start over and create our own urban village plan with youth, merchants, low-income residents, many of whom never been involved in community planning, coming up with our own urban village plan that calls for mixed-income housing, home ownership, rental, cooperative housing, playgrounds, parks, commercial spaces, every amenity of a real urban village. So then began the Take a Stand, Own the Land campaign. And that was where the Community Land Trust idea came from. I'm going to pause in the story of Dudley Street Neighborhood Initiative to step back and just talk about what is a community land trust. It seems like a very complicated idea to some people, but it's very basic. Community Land Trust is an entity that's set up to permanently own and steward the land. That could be affordable housing, commercial spaces, open spaces, playgrounds, industrial spaces, what have you. But in all those situations, the community owns the land and controls how it's used. The real feature of a community land trust is shared equity and dual ownership of the land. And this is most easily explained in the housing example. So under the housing example, the individual buys the home, they get a mortgage from a bank, just like any other homeowner, but in this case, the community land trust owns the land. And what unites them is a ground lease that lays out certain restrictions and certain provisions. It's usually a very long-term ground lease. This is key because it promotes shared equity, which promotes shared responsibility, which promotes more vibrant and more stable communities. In Dudley Street Neighborhood's example, we had an example where we were very concerned about the stability of the neighborhood. So we have probably a more restrictive model in terms of how much equity you can get. And that's been changing. The longer you stay, the higher the formula goes. So it's promoting families to stay in their homes and also to renovate their homes, because you also get a credit for the repairs that you make. In other communities, people have a more rapid way to earn equity. But in any case, it's all about shared equity. It's all about you as a homeowner can get a return on your investment, a nice steady return, but you're not in the boom and bust cycle that we've seen ravage our communities. In the same time, the community also maintains the wealth and is able to sell that home back when you move out to another low-income family and maintain that affordability. Generally, land trusts are structured as nonprofit organizations, community-based, defined geographical area. Sometimes, and the classic model is you have 1/3 of the board members are residents of the land trust, 1/3 are from the community, and 1/3 are from institutions in the neighborhood. So you have a mix. However, some land trusts are set up as part of existing community development corporations. Other land trusts are set up through municipalities or cities that have set up the land trust. So it's a very flexible tool. But in all cases, you need to have resident involvement. That's the difference between a land trust and a community land trust. You've got to have residents really at the lead. So a couple of the real features, a lot of benefits of the community land trust model. I'm going to focus on two main ones. One is permanent preservation of subsidies and promotion of affordability. In the case of a community land trust, you're buying a home, but you don't have to buy the land. So that you're able to buy the home at a cheaper price. When you go to sell your home, you're going to sell for a lower price maybe than you would at the market, but that allows another low-income buyer to buy. So that affordability continues, and the subsidy stays in the project and stays with the land. The homeowner isn't buying the land, but they are buying the home, and they can make improvements, and they can get refinancing, and all of those things, but they have to abide by the terms of the ground lease. Now, why is this important? In Boston recently, they did an audit of the inclusionary development program of the city of Boston, and they found that the city of Boston had either failed to obtain or monitor more than $40 million of inclusionary zoning payments that should have gone for affordable housing. Other scandals involve high-ranking city officials or people with high-paying jobs living in affordable housing. And that just undermines the whole concept. And when people are opposed to affordable housing, they say, look, the deputy mayor lived in it, that's not fair. And it just provides those kind of arguments. Not everyone might love the concept of affordable housing, but I think everyone should be able to agree that the subsidies that are put into for affordable housing should be preserved and monitored. Bernie Sanders, when he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont, was a strong advocate of community land trust. And he tells the story that when he went to the legislature to try to get the rules changed the way you guys have done in Maryland, his strongest supporters were actually fiscal conservatives. And one of them said to him, I hate affordable housing, but I only want to pay for it once. And if you're telling me I can only pay for it once, I'm for you. And that's what kind of drove the movement around land trust. Because people said, I don't want to keep wasting subsidy money and have these scandals every few years. So just to kind of keep that in mind. The other big piece around community land trust is the preservation and stewardship of the homes themselves and the prevention of foreclosures. CLTs provide long-term stewardships because they don't go away. CLTs stay in the neighborhood and work with the homeowners to have successful homeownership. If you're facing a financial crisis, the land trust can step in. And because the land trust own the land, the banks can't just come in and foreclose on you. They have to send a foreclosure notice to the land trust. That gives us the chance to step in and say, you know what, Mr. Jones lost his job. We can work with him. Do not foreclose on him. And that's why land trusts have been so successful. If you look at from 2008 and 2010, the height of the foreclosure crisis, more than 5% of total mortgages got foreclosed upon. But the line at the bottom, less than 1% of community land trust homes got foreclosed upon because of that. For families to thrive and communities to stabilize, we need successful home ownership. It's very simple. And this is one of the strongest features of the land trust model. Other piece I just want to say, the land trust is not just some niche boutique strategy. There are many land trusts that have formed in the last 10 years, and it's a growing movement. There's over 230 land trusts across the country. There's a national community land trust network that is operating and is helping new land trusts get going every week. So this is not something kind of on the fringes anymore. This is really something that has been seen as a viable strategy. So let me come back to Dudley for a minute. So fast forwarding 25 years, the left is the map I showed you before. On the right is the land that now is controlled by the Community Land Trust. The Dudley Neighbors Inc. Community Land Trust now owns 32 of the 62 acres in the Dudley Triangle. We have 226 affordable homes, including 96 homeowners units, and the rest are limited equity cooperative and rental housing. We also have 2 acres of urban farmland. We have a 10,000 square foot community greenhouse. We have playgrounds. We have a park. All of the amenities that were envisioned 25 years ago when the residents came up with their own plan. And lot by lot and building by building, they've transformed that neighborhood. This year, we're completing the final build-out of the final city-owned parcels in the triangle, including our first ever all-commercial building that's going to be coming online in the next year or so. People are moving back in the neighborhood. Properties are going back on the tax rolls. It's had a tremendous impact on Dudley and the families. It's stabilized the neighborhood, and it's increased family and community wealth. In the last 5 years, there were over 200 foreclosures in the Dudley neighborhood. None of them happened on our land trust. In 25 years of the land trust, we've had 4 foreclosures. And all of those properties have gone back online to low-income homeowners. And these are not wealthy homeowners. These are homeowners, our average income of homeowners is between $30,000 and $40,000 a year. So for people who say low-income residents, they can't buy a home because they're just going to lose it, the land trust model is a great antidote and a great response to that. You say, no, they're not going to lose it because we're not going to let them lose it. So just a few before and after photos. That's what I showed you earlier. It's now one of the most beautiful parks in the neighborhood. Housing on the right, all around this park is homeownership housing. We have the West Cottage Street acre-and-a-half community farm. We have a 10,000 square foot Dudley greenhouse. Sells produce right at the local farmers market. And this is our newest home that was closed on yesterday, a single family home that I'll tell you more about in a second, but that now means we have 226 homes, not 225, so I had to change my script here. So I just want to talk quickly about a few other features of the Community Land Trust. And a couple of words of advice. One is that there's a lot of talk about, well, with so much land and housing available for such a cheap price, why would we do anything to complicate development in the city? and that CLTs really aren't built for weak markets. I can tell you that Dudley was as weak a market as any neighborhood in Baltimore 25 years ago. And that's why we were able to get the land. The city agreed, you know what, we can't get investment, we can't get development, let's let these crazy people try to make it work. But even during the worst years of disinvestment and arson and blight and illegal dumping, community leaders really had the vision that one day, because we were 2 miles from downtown Boston, this was going to be an area that was going to be very desirable, and the fear of gentrification and displacement were there. No one in Dudley would have predicted 20 years later the high rents and the high condo prices that are happening and starting to happen in the neighborhood, but they did know that gentrification was coming, and essentially they were able to get enough land under control to create an island of stability in the neighborhood that ensures that the neighborhood is mixed income. That's not alone, that's not the only thing to do. You have to continue the community organizing and planning and advocacy to make sure that the private market and the city is also providing affordable housing. But the land trust has been a key part of that. What I would say to you is plan for future success. Don't give away precious public resources that you're never going to get back without a long-term plan that promotes mixed income neighborhoods and ensures that the residents who fought so hard to turn these neighborhoods around are able to stay and have their families prosper. The other thing I really want to mention is just, again, the flexibility. Land trust model is not about just housing. It's not just about home ownership. There's rentals, there's co-ops, community farms, industrial, commercial, open space. It's flexible. When developers say they don't know what a land trust is, a lot of the land in this city and other cities is under a ground lease. They know what a land trust is. They just, in this case, the resources are going back into the community. But it's the same model. There's a long-term ground lease. You sign the lease. You have certain restrictions. That's how it works. So the model is a very flexible one and should be able to serve everyone's needs. Last but not least, land trusts are a great way to engage the community and really build leadership in the community. These are some of the homeowners on the land trust. Several of them are on our board of directors. Residents have been at the forefront of the community land trust movement since the beginning. And their message is that without a cohesive vision and a long-term community plan, the land trust is just one tool. It's not going to be effective. You have to continue the community organizing. You have to have democratic neighborhood structures to monitor and oversee development. And you need to hold the city and other stakeholders accountable to carrying out the neighborhood plan. So I just want to conclude by really applauding the efforts of the Baltimore Housing Roundtable to pull together all the community partners who are interested in the CLT model as an alternative to current redevelopment strategies. We're pulling together a similar citywide coalition in Boston to try to create more opportunities for CLTs. We're not saying that every project in the city of Boston has to be on a land trust, but we are saying in Baltimore, with announcements of new investments in housing and so many vacant properties, you have an opportunity to really invest in the community land trust model. 25 years ago, they told us that nothing would ever come of our little experiment in Dudley. But by focusing on organizing and creating partnerships among community groups, CDCs, lenders, and city and state government, we've been able to ensure that residents who fought so hard to turn this neighborhood around were able to stay. My final thought I just want to leave you with, North Ave, I had the honor yesterday of turning over the keys to Jacob and his wife Manahil yesterday. They are immigrants from Ethiopia. They work as attendants in downtown parking garage. They have 3 children. Their income is not high. They were living in a very small, cramped apartment. Now they have just moved in yesterday into this home. And this home was built with a partnership with Youth Build Boston, Dudley Neighbors Inc., the Boston Carpenters Union, and students from Madison Park Vocational Tech High School. This is an example of the power of the land trust. It created a permanent home. It created jobs. Over 90% of the workers on the jobs were local residents. It created apprenticeship and job training opportunities for young people. And it created partnerships where the city donated the land and Youth Build was able to build it. This is an example of the power of the land trust model, not just for housing, but for real comprehensive community development. I think Baltimore has all the ingredients you need to implement the land trust model, and I wish you all the best of luck in your efforts, and we'll stand ready to be allies with you and to help however we can. Thank you very much.
So encouraging. I would like to invite now to join me Linda Brown, member of the Northeast Housing Initiative.
Gonna have to raise it up.
Ann Sackey, board member of the Charm City Land Trust. Gregory Brown, CEO and executive chef of the Land of Kush. And Roxy Herberkian, director of Unite Here, Local 7. Would you all join me, please?
Good morning. I'm a member of the Northeast Housing Initiative, and for those of you who are unfamiliar with it, NEHI is a community land trust that grew out of St. Anthony's Social Advocacy Committee. It all began in 2012 with a series of public events, listening campaigns, and political advocacy that repeatedly demonstrated the need for affordable housing. NEHI expanded quickly from a Catholic church group into a diverse group of Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, Muslims, African Americans, men, women, moderate income, low income, and middle class members, all who live in the communities of Northeast Baltimore. NEHI's members are united by our concern about the lack of decent housing for the most vulnerable members of the population and for people of modest means, as well as the deterioration of our communities, which is the result of the foreclosure crisis, unfair, destructive, and fair development policies. NEHI consulted with the National Community Land Trust Network, participated in the United Workers Housing as a Human Right Leadership School, and participated in workshops on real estate development and CLT formation presented by the University of Maryland Development Clinic. NEHI also educated community members and elected officials about the origin and development of the community land trusts and the connection between the for-profit housing system and its failure to meet our needs. With assistance from the University of Maryland Law Clinic, data collected by Morgan State University School of Architecture and Planning, and a grant from the Catholic Campaign for Human Development, NEHI was able to complete a feasibility study and business plan. For assistance, we contacted and contracted the services of Michael Brown of Burlington Associates, one of the best community development consultants in the country. NEHI decided to form a nonprofit community land trust with the traditional CLT three-part board: 1/3 community residents, 1/3 lessees, and 1/3 community leaders. We determined CLTs to be the best tool with which to simultaneously tackle the housing problem, stabilize housing values, support small local contractors, and create training and employment opportunities for community residents. Yet, perhaps our most important reason for deciding to form a CLT was because of those words that you see on the cover of your brochure: community and trust. A CLT is a permanent, community-owned, community-controlled, community-reviving, and community-inspiring institution. It not only develops property, it develops people. The CLT invites every resident to find and contribute their own voice as they participate in the building and maintenance of an inclusive, stable, and sustainable community. CLT members work together to lift up and support the entire community. As an added bonus, CLTs reinvest community revenue back into the community, and CLTs as Mr. Smith said, have proven their resilience during the foreclosure crisis, performing better than any other nonprofit and government housing programs. Nehi is excited about our project, but we are even more excited about the potential for what we are going to do to be replicated all across Baltimore City. Because not only do CLTs give residents the power to transform their neighborhoods by creating permanently affordable housing, CLTs create strong, supportive, vibrant, inclusive communities. CLTs invest in people, change and improve the quality of their lives, and provide the opportunity for the emergence of the next generation of leaders, and I see you all sitting out there in the audience, to carry out our vision for Baltimore into the next century. Thank you.
Well, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ann Mitchell-Saki, and I am a member of the Charm City Community+Land Trust and a resident of the, of the Gallery community. And yeah, that's me, on the screen. Wow, I wasn't expecting that quite that way. Just give me a moment, I'll get here. I came to speak to you this afternoon really about three things. First, I want to talk about being a board member of the Land Trust and how much that has meant to me personally in terms of my investment in the neighborhood that I live in. I'm also just extremely encouraged by what the Land Trust is doing. I'm a gardener, love plants, green space, and there's not a lot of that in my neighborhood. In fact, Charm City Land Trust got started because it wanted to address the issue of affordable housing, but also greening spaces. And we have created the only green space in McElderry Park. We maintain several spaces in terms of our land that we store. And recently, I'm really pleased to announce that we acquired a vacant for which we plan to rehab. The three things I think I'd like to leave with you is to let you know that there is a land trust in Baltimore City. There are more that are forming every day, including our partner, Nehi, Father Ty. Also, that community land trusts are community driven. And that's so critical. How many times do we read an article? Do we see development occurring on our block? And we wonder what's going on and have no idea what that is or what that's going to mean to you. By being a part of the land trust, you understand that a little bit better. The third thing is that we need the investment as another tool, another strategy for Baltimore City. And I have to take a moment to just thank the Housing Roundtable and so many organizations that I've had the privilege of working with to learn about development and community development in Baltimore City. But it wasn't until the Housing Roundtable that I was able to fully understand the importance of a community-driven approach. So thank you all. Remember, Charm City Land Trust does exist, and we're out there moving forward every day.
Good
afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Brown. I own a small little restaurant in Baltimore called the Land of Kush. There I am, Steve. We've been in business for about 5 years. I'm glad there are some customers in the audience. I opened this small business here because I didn't like working in corporate America. I wanted to own my own business. I grew up here in Baltimore. I grew up in Northeast Baltimore in front of the former Northern High School.